In the hills of northwest Connecticut, along the banks of the Naugatuck River, is Torrington. It's the largest city in Litchfield County. It was once a major industrial center with factories lining the banks of the river and scattered along the railroad. And I'm in a special place in this small city, Christmas Village. It's special because Santa, the real Santa, comes every year in early December to talk with the inhabitants until he leaves on Christmas Eve. Now, it's special in December, but it also has magic at other times of the year. Now, it seems like everyone has a special childhood memory of Christmas Village, but not me, because I didn't grow up in this area. But my children are, and I wanted to know the special connections that Chandler, Megan, and Jessa Rose would carry with them through their lives. To them, and to me, Christmas Village has always been a tradition, but we never knew how it started. This sign tells me that Carl Bozenski was special to Christmas Village, but I have no clue who he was or how it began. So I decided to start with the Historical Society. Tell me about Carl Bozenski.
Carl Bozenski was a modest, unassuming individual, yet he was a creative genius when it came to developing programs for the Park and Recreation Department.
I brought my boy to the store and we visited Santa. I saw the ugly mask that the man was wearing and the glum, drab surroundings, and I felt discouraged for my son's sake. I decided then to find something that was the real Christmas. Carl Bozenski.
Carl went down to W.W. Merce Company, which was a large department store, and he went to see about Santa. He had his son with him, and he couldn't get over how cheap everything was. So terrible that he had the awfulest wig on, and he says, "See, there must be something better than that." I know he came home. He said, "It's awful the way those kids have to go down and see a Santa like that." And I think that's when he started thinking about it.
At the beginning, we didn't have that much. We didn't have that many decorations up. Just a few shelves in the toy shop, and there was some original shelves in there when the building was designed. Well, the way I envisioned the toy shop up in the Great North Woods, I envisioned as a dark and eerie place, just with candlelight and lanterns and kerosene lamps and so on. So there was no bright lights of any kind up there. So when the kids would walk in, they'd be sort of mystified, didn't know, what to expect.
I remember coming up here, my mom and my dad, my brothers and sisters in the station wagon coming over the hill and thinking we truly had just, because from Simsbury to Torrington as a small child, that's a long trip. And so thinking, boy, we really did just drive to the North Pole.
When you come out of Santa's room to the elves room, you always want to hear music or hear something going on in the back area. So I remember Carl always saying, make sure the music is always on.
In the elf shop, there was Christmas music playing continually, and of course you got to know the songs pretty well. And even to this day, when I hear a classic Christmas song sung by one of the original artists, I think of my days in Christmas Village. It's so clear to me.
He had some wonderful requirements. He liked to have everyone in their places and make sure that the areas were always full, so every person and every child that was coming in got the same kind of an experience.
Christmas Village is very important to the Commission. All of the commissioners keep Christmas Village in their hearts, and we try to live up to the dreams and ideals that Carl Bozenski had for Christmas Village. We try not to make any changes there because we feel that Carl had the true spirit, and we'd like to keep Carl's spirit alive for many generations to come of Torrington and other citizens.
Unfortunately, I remember Carl that was sick all the time. Carl had tuberculosis back then, and he was in bed 90% of the time when I was over at Dickie's house. It's amazing he survived that, because he was really, really sick, to a kid. I mean, I couldn't believe it. He was always in bed. But always thinking, always had ideas. He always used to say to me and Dickie, what do you think if we change this, if we make that? And of course, kids would, that sounds good, Dad,
Our main job was to produce something that was presentable and entertaining.
My wife and I visited Disney World. The first thing that came to my mind was my father, because Disney World had such detail, and it reminded me of my father, and I think that Walt Disney and my father would have got along very, very well.
Many of the programs that Carl developed involved costumes. For example, the Halloween program, when kids dressed up. And that program was copied nationwide. The blueprint for that program was published in Recreation, the magazine of the National Recreation Association. So communities across the country followed Torrington's lead in creating Halloween celebrations.
The parents working with their children to rig up such amazing costumes. And that's what's important. The children and parents working together.
My father never really wanted any commercialism associated with Christmas Village. And that was not always easy to do because there were vendors who were licensed to sell goods and merchandise on the streets of Torrington, and they had every right to sell on the streets next to Christmas Village. So my father would often have to go down and explain to him that he's trying to keep this non-commercial, and he would certainly appreciate it if they didn't sell any of their merchandise in the area, and it always worked. He had a way about him of convincing these folks that to just not to do that.
He was pretty meticulous about those kinds of things. He had no commercialism to it at all. There was nothing that you could buy or anything that we could sell. We often got asked if we would sell the toys we were making, but that wasn't even an option.
One year, a photographer wanted to come in. He wanted to take pictures of the children with Santa, and he wanted to charge. And he said we'd give us a commission for it, and we said no way. No money passes hands at Christmas Village except donations.
Well, there were companies, and I believe it was Milton Bradley at the time, came in and wanted to donate toys, gifts. But they wanted the advertisement and so on and so forth that goes along with that. People in charge decided that, no, we can't do that because it's commercialism.
The Parks and Recreation Department employees who helped found Christmas Village included Flash Pollock, Paul Friedman, Charles Constable, Andy Yannick, John Maluski, Vera Pardis, Carl Bozenski, Program Director.
We all presented our ideas. We worked together. It was just a good team we had.
When and how did the Christmas tradition develop in America?
Well, Ingrid, I think that we think of Christmas as timeless, right? That it's unchanging. In fact, if Carl Bozenski was looking at Christmas in the 18th century, he wouldn't have recognized it at all. It was largely, when it was celebrated, it was largely a rowdy, raucous kind of celebration. Lots of public drunkenness, young men out in the street parading, a bit more like carnival than anything else. It also had a bit of a trick-or-treat aspect to it, too, as the poor might go begging to their wealthier neighbors, knocking on the door and demanding that they be rewarded with some coins or some food, and in return they would give them their goodwill for the year. So it was really quite a different kind of celebration than anything that we think of.
It's time for a Santa story.
Had one little boy come up. I said, "What would you like Santa to bring you this year for Christmas?" He said, "I told you last year you didn't bring it." He backed up and kicked me in the shin. So I try to tell him that I will bring everything that I possibly can this year, because I want him to have a happy Christmas. He didn't have a merry one the previous year, obviously, and he was content with that. I got an "I'm sorry" on the way out.
Protestants weren't particularly favorable to Christmas because the Bible didn't delineate December 25th as the day of Jesus' birth. And in the 19th century, it was much more associated with Catholic celebrations. Once Christmas was kind of domesticated and became a family celebration, it became more likely for Protestants to celebrate Christmas at all and then to develop kind of a religious church services associated with it. But it took first for it to become kind of a domestic family holiday for Protestants to start really celebrating Christmas at all and to do so in a religious way.
To me, Christmas was a foreign day. When I was a boy, I wondered what Christmas was. I knew there was such a time because we had an Episcopal church in Litchfield, and I saw them dressing it with evergreens and wondered what they were taking the woods in church for. But I got no satisfactory explanation. A little later, I understood it was a Romish institution kept by the Romish Church. Henry Ward Beecher.
How did the image of Santa Claus develop from St. Nicholas?
St. Nicholas was a 3rd century bishop who was from what is now modern Turkey, and he was known for his generosity, particularly his generosity with children. John Pinkard was, he was a merchant, but he was also the founder of the New York Historical Society. He wanted to return New York to its Dutch roots, and so he started to celebrate continental traditions, including St. Nicholas's Day, which, as it had been celebrated before, was December 6th. When Clement Moore wrote that poem of A Visit from St. Nicholas, or plus the night before Christmas, not many people would have known about Santa Claus, or even before that, St. Nicholas in this country. Quite a radical reinterpretation of the holiday. You know, as we know, it begins with this clatter out on the front yard, right? That's the first opening act, which is, again, not unlike the sort of rowdy celebrations that were happening there. And so the expectation is something bad might happen in the poem, right? But instead it's Santa coming down the chimney to give gifts. And it's a very domestic scene. There's the nuclear family, the children all snug in their beds. So it sort of contraposes the rowdy Christmas with the quiet and the peaceful Christmas. Thomas Nash was one of the first to popularize the image of Santa Claus or St. Nicholas, and he started to publish images of Santa Claus on the Christmas celebration pages, the covers really, for Harper's Weekly in the 1860s. And he's the one that really created the image that we know. He gave him his girth, his wide belly, he gave him his red suit, made him the jolly old elf that we really think of today. And that was very much then copied and imitated by advertisers.
Idea of writing letters to Santa began very early in the Christmas Village years. It was 1948, the second year of operation, that someone came up with the idea of having a mailbox for children to write letters to Santa. And Frank Bonacore, the postmaster in Torrington, made a special arrangement with the U.S. Postal Department to place a post office box at Christmas Village. The letters that the children deposited in the mailbox were answered by Park and Rec employees and volunteers, so that every child got an answer in the mail. Unfortunately, today, again, because of constraints of budget and time, the letters that are dropped off at Christmas Village are not answered.
Here we are, very close to Santa's throne room, and why do we have a mailbox? Gus, is this a real mailbox?
This is a real mailbox. The postman comes in every day, takes the mail out. He's the only one that can get in there, and hand delivers it directly to Santa Claus as soon as he takes it out of the mailbox.
My gosh, you mean the kids just put the letters in, and there she goes?
Just open it up, slide the letters in, and
the mailman knows if it's addressed to Santa Claus where to deliver it?
He knows exactly where to deliver it.
Wow, I say that United States Postal Service is smart.
And this is the quickest delivery anybody will ever get.
Great, thanks a lot, Gus.
And in 1948, my mother, my sister, and I came from Italy in May of 1948. And then in September, I started school at St. Francis. So my friends, the little girls, were telling me about writing to Santa, Christmas Village. and then they would pick the best letters and read them on the radio. So I was just learning English, and in my misspelling words or whatever, I wrote a letter to Santa. I didn't tell anybody, and I requested a porcelain doll. And I said, Dear Santa, this is my first Christmas in this country, and I would love a porcelain doll because the only doll I ever had was a rag doll that my grandmother made. And somebody told me that they heard my name in the letter. So I won a prize. I won a nice little ironing board just like this one, and I was just thrilled.
Christmas Village has been an important part of my life since I was 2 years old, when I received a letter from Santa Claus, and this is the envelope, and the postmark is December 23rd, 1955. Only 3 cents postage was required. And it's a letter that I received from Santa Claus acknowledging the letter that I had sent asking for Christmas presents. And Santa Claus back then, as I'm sure he is now, is very tactful because he was very nice in the letter. Dear Michael, thank you for your letter. It was very nice of you to write to me. You know, Michael, I have so many children to visit every Christmas, it's impossible to give you all everything you ask for, but I'll certainly do my best for you and your brother Rick. Merry Christmas to you and your family, your friend, Santa Claus.
But in 1954, Carl had a relapse of his tuberculosis, and he was hospitalized again during the Christmas season. And from his hospital bed, even though he was very ill, he still answered letters to the children.
A few years ago, I got a letter, came from Russia. I thought to myself, you know, if this little kid had the time to write me a letter, I'm going to see what happens. So I sent the letter to Yukon. They translated the letter, and ultimately I ended up sending there was 3 little kids that lived together, a boy, his brother, and his cousin, in Suzdal, Russia. And I got together a package. When I went, they gave me a piece of paper to put down the contents of the box, and I just put down Christmas presents. And the lady said, this isn't going to make it. It has to be done in Russian. And she said, maybe I could help you. And I said, gee, I don't think so. I have to write this in Russian. She said, I'm from Russia. I came over here 5 years ago. I could write whatever you want me to write on for the contents of the box. And it was about 4 months later, I got a return letter from the kids with their picture, with a Charlie Brown Christmas tree, and the dog thanking me for all the gifts. And that was really great, that, you know, they in turn send a letter back thanking me.
Which one is Tippy? And Skippy? And Elmer? I never knew the elves had names until I came to Christmas Village. But even if you don't know that the elves have names, they're still important to Christmas Village. They're not just a cute addition to the toy shop. You know why? Because when my kids see you making a toy, they realize that someone put time and effort into making them. Toys aren't just from boxes on shelves. They see that and they realize that someone took time to make something special, and that's a wonder for them.
My best memory of going through was going from Santa's den into where the elves' workshops were, and it was just magical in there. It was just the lighting, everything, and how the bubbles were always rising, and the monkey was pounding on making something with wood. And then one elf turned around one time and said, "Hi, Rosie, have you been a good girl?" And I thought my eyes just came so wide, and I thought, they know me. They know me. I've been a good girl this year. And that forever has stayed with me. And that's my fondest memory, and I love it, and I'll cherish it forever.
This is an original costume that my mother wore when she was an elf. She was one of the 3 elves that started at Christmas Village, and somehow I just kept it for years and years. When I was little, My father always used to take me to Christmas Village, and I never understood why my mother never took me, but he always said, oh, Mommy was working. And when I was about first or second grade, I remember going in and staring at this one elf and kept saying, that's Mommy, that's Mommy. And of course my father kept saying, oh no, that's not your mother. That's an elf, that's Santa's worker. And I kept saying, no, 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 that's my Mommy. When my daughter was little, she assumed that I was working also. So my husband would always bring her and the boys, and they would come and see me, and they didn't know it was me at all. So that was good. That was really good. I could pull that off. When my daughter was in high school, she decided she wanted to be an elf also. So she did it through her high school years as an elf too. Used to have the beard, which I used to play with as a child, so that sort of got taken away and destroyed. And it did have a hat. It was a red knit hat, I remember that, and it did have a green little tassel on the top.
I have a piece of rope that was actually part of our costumes because this was our beard, and I'm not really quite sure how it becomes untwined, but my understanding was that Vera Pardis had started a connection with someone who was in the service, and that this was actually a piece of rope that was used in the service, and it had been brought somehow to Christmas Village and used so that she used to cut it specifically for each one of the elves. We had our own little costume box, and so the end part of it that was quite tight like this would be all the way up by our ear, and then the rest of it would be spread and opened up, and it would take her quite a long time to do this for each one of us. But you would actually spread out the rest of it along your chin line and then have the other end over here. And it stayed on with spirit gum, which was horrible. We finally learned that you could get away with only 3 spots of spirit gum, that you could put one there, and it wouldn't be so bad to take it off at the end of the night because it was like super glue. We did have a couple of questions from kids because the wireframe glasses had no glass in them. And they would say, how can you see through those? If you don't have any glass in there, how can you see through those? So, of course, it's easy to say that everything's magical.
First one was Vera, my sister-in-law. She was the head elf. And she was good. She was there for 35 years.
We did what she told us to do, but she didn't tell us much, you know, just try to entertain people, basically. But Vera was a wonderful woman. I mean, that's all I remember, how good she was. She always made sure we had something to eat, and, you know, she was our mommy away from home, you know. Yeah, she's a wonderful lady.
We were allowed to hand out the gifts that we actually made. So whatever we made, we actually got to give to people as they came in. And so I even forget what toy I made, but that was like the biggest thing to them. And the father had come over to me after and said that that was all they were getting for Christmas, was that thing that was made by me. And that just like made me feel so good. And that's when I knew being an elf was what I was meant to do.
It was a very cold, rainy night. Young family came in, little child, little girl in arms, probably 2 years old or 3. Her brother was with her, 5, and a young mother and father. This child was carrying on, crying and crying. Of course, she was wet, she was cold. So Tippy, and I'm Tippy, went over to give her a bracelet that I had just made. I thought it was kind of a nice bracelet, and so did the child. She kept quiet for about 2 minutes. The bracelet broke. She screamed bloody murder, and her mother said, please help Tippy. Come on, we'll help Tippy pick up the beads. So we bent down to pick up the beads. In the meantime, a fellow elf came, put another bracelet on her. She settled down, and the little boy called me over. He said, Tippy, Tippy. They whisper to elves. I don't know why, but they do. So he said, Tippy, Tippy, I have to ask you a question. I said, okay, what's that? He said, do you make all the toys for Santa? And I said, yes, I do. He said, I knew it. He said, did you make me a special, I forget the name of it, some kind of a truck? I said, yes. He said, you remember? I said, I do. He said, I knew you made it, Tippy, because it only lasted 2 days and then it broke.
Time for more Santa stories.
I think the year was 1947. My mother took myself and my brother, who at the time was Gregory Mitchell. He was less than a year old. And it was cold. I guess we waited in line. Most of this is related by my mother. And we went in. I had quite a chat with Santa. Everything seemed to go well. I hopefully convinced him of my merits, and everything looked quite positive until he looked down at my brother, who was pretty well wrapped in swaddling clothes or whatever because of the temperature, and asked me what my little sister would like for Christmas. And at this point, I kind of forgot just where I was, and I had some serious scolding words with Santa for calling my little brother a little sister, and finally collected myself and realized I better be kind of cool on this. I assumed, of course, superpowers, that he could determine the sex of a little bundle of joy, but according to my mother, I had some serious words for a while.
One of Santa's biggest problems was when a child would ask for a puppy. Now what do you do when a child asks for a puppy for Christmas? So what this Santa would do, he'd kind of look at the parents to see if he had a thumbs up or thumbs down. And if there was a lot of smiles and thumbs up, well, then it was easy. You could tell little Johnny or little Mary, yeah, they're going to get a puppy, and they got to take care of them, and they've got to love them, and really appreciate them. And then if you get the thumbs down, where they didn't want the puppy, you try to discourage the child and say, you know, when this little puppy, if he gets sick, you've got to take care of him, and you've got to be with him all the time, and it's a big responsibility. And if that didn't work, then Santa would say, well, it's a long, cold ride down here from the North Pole. Do you want your little puppy to catch cold? And that would usually solve the problem.
Since 1989, maybe 1990, I can't remember my first year up here, I have been Silent Santa. And the Park and Rec Department will advertise that this is the night that hearing impaired children or hearing kids with deaf parents or any child that uses sign language to communicate, this is their opportunity to come and sit and visit with Santa. So at age 7, she's standing in line with her mom, and the child that I was just finished chatting with got all done and was ready to leave, and she looks up at her mom, and in a defiant little 7-year-old girl sort of way, she stands there with her hands on her hip, and she looks at her and she says, why? She says, why? She says, I can't talk with Santa Claus, I'm deaf. And just like that. And I saw this. And I said to her, I said, you come here, you come and you have a little talk with Santa Claus. And I still get emotional about this. And she looked up at her mom and she says, he knows sign language. And she came and she ran. And she jumped in my lap from probably 4 feet out. And she just chatted and chatted and chatted and chatted, and it was her first time ever getting to chat with Santa Claus. I was addicted at that point. I was hooked. If there was a child who had never had an opportunity to talk to Santa because of a communication problem, I wasn't going to let that ever happen again. Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh, on the fields we go, laughing all the way. Bells on bobtail ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a sleigh till tonight. Jingle bells.
Here we are with Santa's sled, and we have 2 very happy-looking people on Santa's sled. Maybe Santa's sled is going to be full of presents. And your name is?
Michael.
Michael, and you are? Help me. Okay, that's enough. It's good to see you here. You having a good time?
One wanted my sleigh bells. So I said, well, God, I can't really give you my sleigh bells because that's what I use if I see an airplane. I jingle the bells and they see me and they won't run into me. So she wanted one of my bells. I said, I can't really give you any because if I give you one, then everyone's going to want one. So I have to keep my sleigh bells.
For my oldest son, Santa's sleigh just was so important to him. At one point, he could not have been more than 4, and I couldn't get him out of the sleigh. He wanted to be in that and understand how it was that Santa could have that magic that made that sleigh travel around the world.
This is the door to Mrs. Claus's room. It wasn't always that, because it used to be the toy room. I never knew that there was a time when Mrs. Claus didn't come to Christmas Village. Now she comes every year and gives each child a candy cane.
And I welcome you to Christmas Village, and thank you for coming here all these years. I've been here 13 years now.
Mrs. Claus interacts with the children. They come in, they like to talk, they like to give you letters, to give to Santa. If there's something that they forgot to tell Santa, they can tell me.
We had one little girl that came in. She came in with her family, and she was very quiet. I think a little overwhelmed with her visit with Santa Claus because she came in with some tears in her eyes. And her brothers and sisters were very excited to share with Mrs. Claus the fact that, that they were able to tell Santa Claus what they wanted and looking forward to Christmas, and they were going to behave and they were going to go to bed early that night. This little girl spotted a book on Mrs. Claus's desk, picked it up, laid down on the carpet in front of the fireplace, and was ready to just make herself at home.
Christmas Village, throughout its history, has helped to assimilate different ethnic groups into the Torrington community.
And I've had different people from different places. In fact, I had a Jewish boy, and he came to visit me, and his mother and father came with him. So that made me feel great, that everybody enjoys Christmas Village.
The little child sat on my lap, and they spoke what I think was Japanese, sitting there with their eyes wide, or his eyes wide open, and I thought there was a little girl, and so I gave him a doll, and he gave me that look like, I don't think you're supposed to do that. But they were very polite, and they didn't want to insult Santa, so they started to walk out, and the mother and father, none of them could speak English, and obviously I couldn't speak Japanese, but they did point to their child and say, boy. So it was kind of embarrassing.
You know, the fact that so many Jewish families celebrate Christmas today is really, I think, indicative to the ways in which Christmas has become, but always had strong elements of the secular holiday too. That it's not quite as perhaps religious in some ways as we think of it.
Now, more recently, there has been a huge influx of Latino immigrants to Torrington. Many of the Latinos are from Ecuador, and I know that they regularly bring their children to Christmas Village. So the Latino immigrants who go to Christmas Village, both the children and the adults, now have something in common with other residents of Torrington, that shared experience, and it's those bonds that help build community.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good tidings to you.
Another one of the unique traditions of Christmas Village is the toy shower concept. And again, that was something that was instituted very early. I think it was 1948, because funds had to be raised to give a toy to each child. If Christmas Village was going to be free and non-commercial, well, it had to be funded somehow.
Well, they had a toy shower day, a whole day. They spent an evening. It was on the radio, and then they had a Yankee Peddlers gave a place that people could walk in and donate wherever they wanted to. And that helped the expense of toys.
The first year we ran out of toys to give to the children, so we passed out colored crayons. The second year we didn't anticipate the crowd, so we ran out of toys again. So we gave out colored popcorn balls and colored cellophane paper.
I got involved with, at that time, radio station WTOR, Ed Waller and Al Ayer, and they did something called the Christmas Village Toy Shower, where we would sit in the studio and the kids or their parents would call in and they would make requests for specific songs like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Dominic the Donkey.
My father really worked on Christmas Village a lot more than some people probably thought. I can always remember him spending all kinds of time trying to identify toys. He'd like to have toys for girls and toys for boys. He wanted to make sure that the toys were memorable and they were just some cheap things that you could get and throw away. So he spent much of his time in the off season writing to toy companies and getting samples back, looking at toys.
I'd go down, they'd give me odds and ends for like 10% of cost. It got so that we had enough toys, we had to get one of these box trailer trucks and park it out in the back parking lot to store all the boxes of toys that we give out.
Paul was the puppet master, you might say. When he was up there, he was the one that was on the side, controlling all of the little things that used to go bump in the night, you might say. All the animals that moved, the trains that ran around the track, a monkey that swang, or the gorilla that swang from the ceiling, the parachute that used to go up and down when you came into the room, the spider that used to always come down and scare the people. So it was all, done by, and I always say, by Paul, because he was there at the beginning.
The large monkey, that was the center of attraction. The kids would probably go back and tell the other children, "Hey, when you go in a toy shop, watch out for that monkey. He's a rascal." So when they burst in that door, that's the first thing they looked for was the monkey. So I had the birds going up and down on the rods. And that took their attention off the monkey for a while. I had some fish line hooked up those ears, so I wiggled that a little bit. They said, "Look at his ears, watch that. Look at his ears. See him wiggle?" They'd watch his ears for a while. I'd step on that some reason that party would shoot out at him, with a whistle and a noise. There was a fluffy at the end, colored feather fluffy at the end of it. And then at the same time, the skunk would start up and head towards him. The whole crowd would jump back and the kids jumped back. Then they all started laughing. But they kept watching that monkey all the time.
So Dickie and I had the idea we were going to have our own. And it was going to be a spider. And it was right over the door, or just on the side of the door, where most of the tall men used to stand. And every now and then we'd let this spider down on top of somebody's head.
We'd take old toys that were battery operated, and I would take them and rewire them so I can operate them by remote control. They would have a little button. I'd have a button at their station where you just press the button and these things all over the room would move or sing or swing or whatever they're rigged up to do.
And that's what made it nice about the village. If you went back in 5 years, 15 years, 20 years, you could go to a certain building in the elf shop or Santa's room and look. And that certain position, be it a person who's coming to visit or a worker, you can go up and say, that toy is still there, or the animal is still there. It never changed. And that's what was so nice about it, where people will go and say, "Geez, I haven't been here in 30 years, but I remember that toy being in that spot." So that was the nice part about it, where we always try to keep it almost exactly what it was every single year.
But I would say the major attraction there for toys would be the train. That everybody is crazy about the train, whether they're kids or whether they're adults. They really love the train. It goes around on the top.
The problems of gift giving came right on the heels of Christmas's establishment. Gift giving was really a central part of Christmas. In some ways, I think it was important because it helped to create a sentimental Christmas. Giving a gift is one way that you establish a tie to someone else, particularly if it's a family member. It's kind of a token of your emotion to them.
I think from a child's perspective, they see a toy as a gift with magic. I never heard a child complain about what he got. One year, Chandler got a baseball bat. Just simply a baseball bat, but he was thrilled. It was his Santa bat. He took it to bed with him every night. You can never predict the effect of a gift on a child. It can have long-term effects that you never expect.
Do you remember a gift that was given to you by Santa Claus at Christmas Village?
Back then, toys were simple. It was either a small doll or a stuffed animal or a little tiny, the little hand toys, little play toys that you had.
Yeah, it was probably a coloring book.
Yep, with Santa Claus coloring book.
What did you get?
A plastic train, and then my brother teared it apart.
Yeah, brothers are good for that.
Yeah.
I think it was a puzzle. Yeah, I think it was a puzzle. That was a long time ago. 30, 35 years? Oof. Yeah, that's rough. Oh well.
Well, this is a clipboard I received from Christmas Village when I was probably
5 or 6.
5 or 6.
Yeah.
And I hung on to it, and I knew this was going to happen.
He took really good care of it, and he did all his homework on it from the time he was 6 years old, was it?
Yeah. On the back, my mother put my name and my address and my phone number, and it showed the alphabet, capital letters, small letters. It showed numbers. It showed some simple math equations. And I did all my homework on it. I did a lot of my college work on it when I was home. And it's just an interesting piece. It's probably about 45 years old, and it's not written on or destroyed, and the clip still works on it. My first sketches of my house were drawn on a piece of paper on this board.
Yeah. I have my little elf friends here because when I was a kid, maybe about 8 years old, my father, who did the police duty at Christmas Village, was given some elves to take home. I don't really know why. Maybe they were getting new toys. That's the most likely reason. And these were not to be played with. And since they're 45 to 50 years old, they look like they haven't been played with. And they're, just part of Christmas Village every year.
How about the kid that wanted the truck? There was a certain kind of truck. I don't know if it was an O&G truck or...
Oh, yeah, I think his dad worked for O&G. Yeah, he wanted an O&G truck, and he knew exactly what it was, what model it was, who made it, what engine was in it, and that's what he wanted. And he gave me strict instructions on how it was to be delivered. Yeah, it was incredible. He couldn't have been any older than like 3 years old, but he knew exactly what he wanted. Yeah.
This is the toy shop at Christmas Village. The old-timers call it the new toy shop, but it's the only one I've ever known. The children don't care when it was made or why. They just want to enjoy it. We spend a lot of time here. We don't move through the toy shop very quickly. Just the masses of toys fires their imaginations. Some of them old, some new, and they can imagine what it would be like to play with each one of them.
Times are troubled right now, and I think it's important that Christmas Village remain the place that people can go and to relive their childhood and to feel that peace, contentment, and the magic that exists there.
We had a problem because the toy room wasn't really big enough. As soon as one group came in, the other group came from Santa's, they had to come out. It was sometime maybe only a couple, 3 minutes, and the people had to get out. So it was a bad experience for the kids who wanted to see everything going. We decided on a log cabin type building. I got like 100% cooperation from everybody that I approached for donations. It didn't cost the city 1 penny for that toy room. Now it's big enough so that they could stay in there almost as long as they want.
A lot of fun doing the toy shop. That was a lot of pleasure. Got all the volunteers and had a whole bunch of volunteers and had all those Lincoln logs we put together. And we got the Cordani brothers to build a fireplace at the toy shop, and it was nice. It was a very wonderful experience.
A local businessman called me, said, "I didn't hear you mention a fireplace in the building." I said, "Gee, I'm sorry." I said, "We just don't have enough money to put a fireplace in." He said, "I would like to donate one." And I said, "That's great. We could buy one of those little inserts, put it over in the corner, put some bricks around it." He said, "No." He said, "I want a regular working fireplace that's the size to be compatible with the building. He said, but there's one condition: I will remain anonymous.
Torrington's will was tested, many times in the mid-20th century, first by the flood of 1955, and then again by the economic downturn in the late 20th century when a lot of our manufacturing base evaporated and jobs were lost. But I think Torrington has the will. I think it's shown that it has the will to continue to tackle large community projects. For example, in the not too distant past, we've refurbished Fusnich Park, Co Park. We've created new arts and cultural organizations here in Torrington. We've even made a BMX track that's wildly successful. So all of those are fairly big projects. And in addition to that, we've created, the community's created a new toy shop for Christmas Village. That itself was a significantly large project.
The height of volunteerism in this country was probably the first half of the 20th century. Since the 1960s, we've been in decline in volunteerism. Probably the good news is that it's on an increase again. We're starting to see a little upswing among younger volunteers and older volunteers. But in terms of volunteerism in Christmas, I think it was again connected most closely with those civic organizations that started to organize the public lightings of the trees in the early 20th century. It was the Rotary Group, it was the Women's Club. Those were the organizations that started the public Christmas celebration.
I think some of the other things that I find as Mrs. Claus is the excitement of the kids is just infectious. It gives you a sense of the magic, and the mystery and the wonder that, that is Santa Claus. And if it weren't for Christmas Village, I don't know that would be possible at this point in my life.
As an adult, sometimes Christmas can lose its sparkle. And this is a really nice way for me to celebrate Christmas.
The job of the commission is it's not a great one, because when you have so many people that are involved and truly care about that village, from the superintendent of parks to the recreation director to the dedicated parks workers, they make it all happen. And we are very lucky to have, such supportive people. So our job is really not a job.
Making a lot of kids happy. That was all part of life,
The City of Torrington would like to thank you for your dedication and commitment over the years. Your passion for Christmas Village has paved the way for making this historical landmark the wonderful place it is. So let's all give Paul another round of applause. And thank you.
It's time for a Santa story.
The little girl had been given up at birth, and this couple had adopted her. And when she climbed up on Santa's knee, Santa asked her, the usual questions: how's school, and you help mommy around the house? And then Santa says, what do you want for Christmas? And the little girl said, Santa, there's only two things I want for Christmas. Number one, I want my birth mother to know that I forgive her and I love her very much. Secondly, she said, I hope that my birth mother, no matter where she is happy and healthy. And coming from a young girl, I thought that this was pretty touching.
Does the tradition of Christmas Village tell us something about community in the Torrington area?
I think that the Christmas Village tradition here tells us first and foremost that this community really cares a lot about its youth, because this program is a youth program that's been going on for over 60 years, and it really shows that commitment.
But all is not perfect at Christmas Village, mostly because it's too successful. It's the lines. You stand there for 2 or 3 hours in the cold or the snow. Everyone complains, especially when there are only 2 people ahead of you and you're thinking, we're close to seeing Santa Claus. But then they call on their cell phone and suddenly 12 more people are in front of you. That's when you have to be sure to hold on to the Christmas spirit and not lose it.
We have complaints about waiting in line, but I think what it is not so much that we've changed anything. The numbers visiting the village have increased through the years, and we still let the same amount of people in. We have different stations for them. It's just that I think that it's the people of today. They're not used to waiting in line for anything, and so they think that, you know, maybe there we can, you know, hurry things up. How are you going to hurry a child from sitting on Santa's lap and telling him something? You're not going to say, hurry up, get down now. We're not going to do that.
This is my first year doing it this early. We came here at 8 o'clock and we're waiting for our children to come around 1.
So my parents started taking me here in 1972. We moved to Southington, me and my kids now, so we come back every year. My daughter's 13. I've been taking her here every single year and waiting in line while she waits at my parents' house for that phone call for me to say, okay, they're open, come on down.
We're from Chesterfield, Michigan. I grew up in Torrington, and it's, you know, it's about the kids. It's about, you know, those memories.
When I was a little girl, my mother would stand in line with me in the frigid cold. And we would walk and we would inch up to the barrel of fire to warm ourselves up. And my father would be on duty there as a policeman. So I felt all warm and toasty with the fire, you know, and both my parents being there, and I was going to see Santa Claus.
This is the door to Santa's room. When you reach here, that's the best moment. That's when anticipation reaches its fever pitch. We're gonna get in and it'll be great. But what will I ask for? And when that door opens, it's magical. I'm still struck by how big the tree is and how it's not fake. It feels authentic inside. All these kids see Santa and the magic of Christmas is there and very real to them.
Seeing Santa was a great experience, but it was the whole atmosphere of the room that kind of, you know, set the tone for me.
I was getting closer and closer to my turn to get up to Santa Claus, and standing at his knee, I was next to get on his lap and tell him what I wanted for Christmas, and I proceeded to throw up on his boot. Everything after that is a blur.
Well, I had one little boy came up and asked for a fly swatter. That's all he wanted for Christmas was a fly swatter. He didn't know why, just a fly swatter. And his parents just stood there in awe. Tried to give him a truck. He started to cry because he didn't get a fly swatter.
I believed in Santa, and in fact, I think I still do.
A very special Christmas song called Santa's Message, which was written by John Audia many, many, many years ago, right when Christmas Village was founded.
Snowflakes falling gently like an angel's frozen tears. Christmas lights are soft and bright, and music fills your ears. Santa's workshop is the place for children to enjoy. They can visit old Saint Nick and see his Christmas toys. Helpers building trains and planes, and they can run them too. But oh, what fun on Christmas Eve when they all belong to you. Santa Claus will say to you, have you been good all year? Then you will receive your toys and be glad that Santa's here. Late at night when lights are low, he'll fill your dreams with joy. Bless you all at Christmas from dear old Santa Claus.
And Ed Waller used to do the Master of Ceremonies work for the opening day of Christmas Village, which is coming up here on December 13th. And he retired, I lost track of the time, 10, 15 years ago, and at that time I took over that job. And to this day, I have become the Master of Ceremonies for opening day for Christmas Village.
This is the gentleman you've all come here to see. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Santa Claus.
Christmas. Santa wants to wish each and every one of you a very Merry Christmas, and thank you for coming out and giving us such a warm and great welcome. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Santa. Merry Christmas to you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we officially open.
Over and over again, I hear people say that Christmas Village is the best thing about Torrington. And other people have said that Christmas Village is something that's put Torrington on the map. So indeed, it does have a very special meaning to the people here. But even on a more personal level, I think it has meaning because people value their personal experience there.
One of the unique things about Catskill Game Farm at that time was they actually had a petting area where you go in and pet the animals, and I think that's where my father got the idea of having initially Rudolph and then eventually Snowflake penned off in a separate area where children could go in and pet the animals.
There was a giant snowflake was coming down, and there was no storm in sight. It was just a giant snowflake, one flake. I said, boy, look at that giant snowflake. What a name that'll be for that little fawn. That's how we got the name Snowflake.
When I first started, half of the village was one big fencing area with one lean-to way over in the corner. And all the reindeer would run uncaged, just inside that area. They made one long lean-to with 9 stalls. And each deer had a stall of his own. And that kept them closer to the people.
There was another time when a very important tradition at Christmas Village came under attack.
Torrington's famous Carl Bozenski Christmas Village opens for its 61st season Sunday. It's Santa's home away from home with a jolly old elf, Mrs. Claus, and the Elves Toy Shop. But don't expect to see Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, or Vixen, or the rest of the reindeer, including Rudolph. Blame a state law, not the Grinch. Torrington usually rents reindeer from out of state, but Connecticut officials won't allow that due to a 2002 state law prohibiting transport of reindeer over state lines due to concerns over so-called chronic wasting disease.
So we were going to mainly go to see the reindeer, and with no reindeer being there, we figured it might not be the best option, and it's not Christmas Village without the reindeer, so.
I myself didn't go up that last year. I couldn't see looking at sheep at Christmas Village.
I did a little research and found out that reindeer were the only cervid that wasn't susceptible to the CWD, the chronic wasting disease that they had over in Europe where the cows were shaken. So I got a hold of Senator Rohraback and asked him if he could help me in Hartford to see if we could get the law changed.
What I hope to do is to change that law to say that an exception could be made in cases where you're importing reindeer, because reindeer have not been shown to be susceptible to chronic wasting disease, and even if they were to come to Torrington, we keep them fenced at Christmas Village. So I'm hoping to give the DEP and the Department of Agriculture the opportunity to say yes when we ask whether we can import reindeer from New York State.
Reindeer could be returning to Torrington's Christmas Village this December.
I went and testified along with a fellow from New York who was a past president of the American Reindeer Association. He came down to help me with this, with the testimony over there, and it passed. Much to everybody's amazement, I guess.
The state Senate yesterday unanimously supported and sent to the House for final action a bill by Goshen Republican Senator Andrew Rohraback to repeal a reindeer importation ban imposed by the State Department of Environmental Protection back in 2002.
We got the deer back, so Santa's able to have his reindeer.
We just decided to wait until this year when there's going to be reindeer. So, and he's looking forward to going to see the reindeer this year. Who do you want to go see at Christmas Village? The reindeer?
No pet.
No pet?
Quickly, Christmas Village became a tradition that the community embraced. and the community has worked hard to preserve not only the tradition of the village itself, but a lot of the component traditions of the village, such as the fact that it's free and non-commercial. There's reindeer and a toy shop, and all of the traditions are very important.
He was very happy because he put a lot of thought into that. He was so very happy that it worked out as well as it did.
I remember sitting on the ground with my father while all the reindeer came up against the fence and visited with us. So I'll never forget stuff like that.
It certainly is one of Torrington's gems, one of our finest representations of what a great city can be all about. It's been a wonderful experience.
The traditions are the same, the stories are the same, and I believe the reaction from the children is the same as well. So it's a good thing. It's one thing that Torrington absolutely can be very proud of.
It's unique. It's a unique place.
It was a lot of fun. You could use your imagination. You can make people happy. You can also surprise them, you know. In fact, I used to have to laugh so much my stomach would hurt, you know, the reactions I got from the children.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas.
I think the whole magic and special feeling that Christmas Village gives is something people want to remember. To have that special spirit in a small town in Northwest Connecticut that they can take with them wherever they go, that's important. They remember it because that soft spot in their heart ties them to warmth and good feelings and childhood and all things that are cherished. And that's what we're giving our children. Not just the memories, but the lesson that what is good lasts and that we need to pass that on to the next generation.